Who am I? I am the short, in a nutshell, I am a high-end cognitive scientist, University of Chicago and Columbia, who left academics and evolved slowly into a shaman and a healer. That's making a long story very short. I'm currently a leading practitioner of family constellations in North America, and I do also a lot in the energy psychology community, and I use energy psychology as well. I have 2 books out that I'm particularly proud of. This one is Health, Happiness, and Family Constellations, which we'll be using for the training. And this is the Family Constellation Practice Builder, which is a really good look at what you need to do to grow your practice. And I'm really on a crusade to tell the world that there are 2 kinds of trauma. There's the kind that happened to you personally, you experienced it. And there's the kind that happened to somebody that's close to you, an ancestor, for example, who never processed it, and either through epigenetics or some sort of psychic mechanism that we don't really necessarily understand yet, but clearly exists, you inherited it. But it didn't really happen to you. That's mostly what constellations began as a method to do. This crusade is also about, the high-end traumatologists, the guys that are doing, and women that are doing the best work on trauma, which is now really good. We really understand it now. They still haven't really gotten to the fact that you can inherit it as well as experience it. The other thing to know about me is Michael loves questions. We say that all the time in the first couple trainings, and people get it. And we get a lot of wonderful interactive discussions in these trainings. We're going to bounce back and forth here between showing you an overview of the course content and telling you how the course works. I use a lot of, I'm pretty well acknowledged as a very good teacher who uses a lot of good graphics and things like this. So I'm going to take you now into a Prezi presentation. Prezi is the sort of online successor to PowerPoint. It's much richer and more powerful and more beautiful. And I'll be using the presentation that I built for the 2015 San Diego Constellation Conference, which was presented there. So let me get the screen share going. Okay, are we seeing the Prezi, Sandy?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so now it's going to do that for a second. So the thing about this tool is it allows you to see the whole presentation laid out in space and zoom around and magnify to almost any level. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at what are home altar constellations? Where do they come from? Some of the how-tos. I'm going to just give you a taste of them. The whole training is about the how-tos. And it's a practical training where you are really invited to do these and submit them either for use in class or post them on our private secret Facebook page and get feedback on them. What home altar constellations are good for? A lot of things. I'll be showing you examples. We've got some teaching constellations here, worked through this one in detail. So we're going to do right now, before we go back and talk about the training, we're going to do what are home altar constellations and where do they come from. I can give you a definition. It's kind of a core definition from which various things can diverge. So the core is these are solitary do-it-yourself constellations. Instead of using figurines or footprints or little checkers, they use ordinary household objects as representatives. Instead of happening in a single session, they happen via regular visits. It's an iterative process that allows you to engage a lot more of your intuition. They happen on a dedicated little altar surface that you place someplace in your home, and they happen over a period of days or weeks. Now, I'm going to unpack this and show you how it varies a little bit, but before I do that, let's look at where they come from. So when I was trained, I've been with 14 trainers. That's about the number right now. Many of the international trainers, very well known. I've learned a lot, and I'm very grateful. I was given wooden figurines, and I was given footprints, and I first did, constellations in workshops, or I did them in private sessions using figurines of footprints. But I also did a lot of remote work and ongoing coaching or energy psychology work, and people didn't have figurines or, little footprints. And I couldn't really, I saw that there were better things I could buy, but I didn't see the point in a way. And then there's Santry Therapy, which home altar constellations are intimately related to. It works with kids. Typically, people who do this have really elaborate sets of figurines. So that's, not helping me with the remote thing. But the sense of childlike engagement that happens in Santry Therapy is really important for constellations in general, for psychic skills in general, and for home altar constellations. I was trained as a shaman by indigenous and mixed blood Native American style teachers, 1986 through 93. That worldview, which is my worldview, is that everything is alive and conscious and willing and able to communicate with us, share with us, dance with us. We just need to open our minds and show some respect and pay attention. And I was particularly taught that not to call my stuff, my medicine stuff, not to call it tools, but to call it medicine helpers. We personalized these things. So the idea, the idea of doing work with little beings on an altar coalesced with this notion of, oh, well, let's do constellations that way, in an ongoing way, not necessarily just in one session. So I had a client that I was seeing on a weekly basis, and I had her set up her desired positive change and some of the issues in her ancestry, and she would send me pictures of whatever happened as she visited it over time. And it, within about 5 weeks, this just amazing constellation took place. Cats were important in this constellation because she had loved cats and was rescuing cats all over the place and had a real emotional scar around having abandoned a cat in a situation where a man was abusing her and she couldn't take the cat with her. And one of her cats actually started moving things around on the altar, and it was meaningful. So this was very cool. And so, I really thought, well, look, this is a do-it-yourself form of constellations and or something you can do with a practitioner. This idea was worth exploring more. By the time I wrote Health, Happiness, and Family Constellations, I had done a lot of them. I had already taught the home altar course a couple times, and I was convinced that this was very wonderful training, regardless of, I'll talk about that in a minute, but I tend to say it's good for everybody. I don't care if you've done a lot of, group workshops. It's good to do this for some reasons that we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so I'm going through this rather quickly, and you can watch this video again, of course, but you can also access this Prezi online by going to tinyurl.com homealtarprezi/home altar Prezi. And so you can go through it again or show it to friends and take however much time you want with it. So here's just a picture of an initial setup. This is an actual client's setup. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I just want you to imagine, and in the training I will show you a picture, setting up this same constellation with little figurines. You set it up with little figurines, and the same kind of little figurine for each entity, each rep here. And I mean, the difference is astonishing. There is so much more symbolism here. It is so much richer. Okay, so that's a kind of where they came from. Now let's go back to what are they and unpack that a little more. What? Well, the difference is they're ordinary household object persons. And we use object persons because my Native American teachers would talk about the stone people and the plant people. So this was a personal honorific, in a sense, applied, so that we did not think of my car as a thing. The whole point of the Native point of view, and increasingly the perspective that's coming out of quantum physics, is consciousness. Everything is a form of consciousness. Consciousness probably comes first, and material causes and effects are generated from it. Okay, after what? Where? They happen on a dedicated altar. I'll tell you how to pick one, cleanse one, what it needs to be like. We'll talk about how to choose the reps, which is very much like, well, it's very much like choosing the representatives in a group workshop, except that it's richer, but it's still done intuitively. If our minds knew the answer, we wouldn't need to do a constellation. When instead of a single session, it happens over hours, several visits over an hour, or over weeks or days, or you can use the object persons in a single session with a private client, or in a single session with a remote client. So what I'm doing now is sort of showing you the variations from the core form. Who does it? You can do it alone, and it's a DIY version of Constellations, or it might be done, as it says here, in lots of different ways. The way that we'll do most of them in the training is, if you choose to, you will learn to take pictures with your smartphone, label them for us, and send them into the secret private Facebook group, and or submit them for use in class, and they will be unpacked, and you will get all sorts of feedback and help. And this is a wonderful, rich, practical experience for people.